I started my company, it was called Guru Vantage. In India, there were a lot of educated youth, but not really as many employable youth.
People moving towards this entrepreneurial side of things. तो आप क्या उनको suggest या advise करना चाहेंगे?
First, make sure that you're financially in a position. The second piece I would say is, as an entrepreneur, think about taking smaller steps. And the third piece I think which I'll suggest is that know when to call it quits. Venture works or doesn't work, you become rich or you become intelligent. If you're seeing a creator content on your phone, there are 80 million creators in India.
Wow.
And less than 1% of them actually make a sustainable living.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the next episode of my podcast Marketing Masala Marke. My name is Ritesh and I'm the founder of the Kite Flyers. Today my guest is someone who's dabbled with multiple career options in his life. He started as an army officer and served the nation, followed it up with a entrepreneurial venture where he created a software platform, then moved into the corporate world and served some of the leading brands. Now he is a full-time author who's about to publish his first book on creator economy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ankur Mehra. Hi Ankur, thank you so much for joining and being a part of Marketing Masala Marke. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Ratish. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Likewise. And we kind of go back a long way on a personal level also, and it's really nice to see where you are today. Could you just walk me through your journey so far in life?
First of all, it's such a pleasure meeting you after a bit of a gap.
Yeah.
We certainly go back a long time back, so it's really nice to reconnect with the old friend that way. So I'm really enjoying this.
Absolutely.
And of course, in terms of like my journey up till now, I've had a very, very diverse career path up till now. It's been full of adventure and twists and turns, unexpected scenarios, which have only shaped the day where I am today. To give you a quick context, I started my career few decades back, maybe a couple of decades back. But that time I had joined the army. So my first job was in the army. So I'm a military veteran. Was in the army for a few years. And after that, when I left the army, I was working in the corporate sector, especially in the media space.
Okay.
Started working with the Z Group, which is a very well-known traditional media broadcasting company. And I was heading the digital media sales for them. Immediately after my time at Z, I was an entrepreneur for a few years. And me and a few of my friends got together and we were building this educational web startup back in 2007 and 8.
Okay.
So it was very innovative at that point. We were trying to build skill development ecosystem, if you may. And then after my entrepreneurial venture, I got picked up by a company which is based out of UK. And they were the largest YouTube multi-channel network.
Wow.
And I was the country manager in India for a few years. Subsequently, Facebook happened, Mehra reached out and I joined them. For the next 7-8 years, I was with them. And then I have had a chance to live across the world, lived in Ireland for some time, lived in Singapore, lived in the US. Now have come back to India. And for the last 1 year, I've been very busy focusing all my learnings and compressing all my learnings into a book. And I'm currently an author on the creator economy.
Wow.
I identify myself as a creator economist, if you may.
Wonderful. Wow. So that's quite a diverse portfolio, if I may say so. मेरे को आपसे दो सवाल पूछने हैं. So I'll start with the first one. You start working in a corporate setup and you continue doing that, and then you make one switch in life. And then there is the other side where आप एक switch करते हो और फिर वापस switch कर जाते हो. Corporate में वापस आ जाते हो. But आपके केस में so you did the defense army, right? उसके बाद lot of people take premature retirement and that's a normal phenomena. फिर आपने entrepreneurial stint किया, फिर उसके बाद आप corporate world में चले गए. अब आप एक third चीज़ में आ गए, fourth में. तो पहले तो मुझे आपसे ये जानना है कि जो आपकी entrepreneurial journey थी, जितनी duration की वो थी, पहले तो मुझे आप उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा बताओ.
Yeah, great question. When you say so many, pivots in my life, I'll go ahead and say, what is that word? YOLO? Hashtag YOLO. So you only live once, right? So it's always good to experiment.
Of course.
And I think that was the basic science behind me taking those daring steps and changing my career path many a times in between. Because I always felt like, there is so much more to life to kind of go ahead and explore and all those things. So like when I joined the army, I had grown up in an army background. My father was in the army. So army was my first love, always has been. So I had to go there. But then entrepreneurship, corporate life, authorship, everything is kind of been where I've felt like there are some more challenges that I need to kind of put myself into and have a more rich sort of a background, a more diverse background in that sense. Coming back to your question in terms of how my entrepreneurial journey was, yeah, I think it was a brilliant adventure and a brilliant experience. I started my company, it was called Guru Vantage. We were 3 co-founders. We really did something which was not thought about at that point in time. For example, in India, there were a lot of educated youth, but not really as many employable youth. So we wanted to fill this gap in between education and employment. And therefore, we thought that how about building a skill development marketplace where all of these different components in the skill development industry can come together and exchange. So I think from a concept point of view, it was a great experience. We really enjoyed building it and all. The big learning for us was that we ended up looking for too much of perfection. As an entrepreneur, I feel that there has to be a bit of a hustle, and we got to be moving in the framework of, doing is better than perfecting it,
Right.
So we went in the other way around. We wanted to perfect it out, and then, so I think that kind of burned a hole in our pocket, number one. And number two, when you're selling a service versus when you're selling a product, in hindsight, I feel that had we productized our offerings at that time, we would have seen a better outcome for us in that sense. We were more service oriented and less product oriented. And apart from that, I think there was nothing really that compares to the experience of starting your own enterprise.
Absolutely.
Working with your people who are like thinkers and building something from a scratch, from zero upwards. It's a momentous phase in your life, actually.
Absolutely.
And I feel that everybody who's been in a corporate life or in wherever you are in your stage of life, definitely think about how can you create something and how can you build a venture from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from an entrepreneurial lens. And that will only, if nothing else, even if the venture works or doesn't work, you will be much better off because you will only have become much more mature and much more learned from the experience of that venture that you had started in the past. So either you become rich or you become intelligent. Only two.
That's very nice. Acha, आजकल there's a surge, if I may use that word, in people moving towards this entrepreneurial side of things. अगर आपको अपनी पूरे उस तजुर्बे का gist किसी को देना हो, so what would be 2-3 things that you would like to advise people who are contemplating getting into that space, maybe out of corporate job or just out of college or whatever? तो आप क्या उनको suggest या advise करना चाहेंगे?
That's a good question, actually, but I want to be really mindful of the answer.
Sure.
But the first suggestion would be is to make sure that you're financially in a position where you're able to take calculated risks.
Okay.
Like park that money away so that this could be your experimental money. This could be a money that you're kind of building for your own learning, if that may be, to realizing your own vision. But don't put all stakes on the point over there.
Understood.
The second piece I would say is that, like I was saying earlier, done is better than perfect. As an entrepreneur, think about taking smaller steps, and every little milestone that you achieve is better than having the full picture and then going into the market. Like, don't aim for perfection at the first go itself. Aim for just getting it done right, and then improve upon it over time.
Okay.
And the third piece, I think, which I'll suggest is that know when to call it quits. Like, we get too married emotionally to our own venture sometimes. And I think it's important to know that the sun has set down, It's okay to call it a day over here. It's okay to understand that not everything is meant to be working out at this particular moment itself. It's okay to understand the time's up. And maybe you should call it a day and start, going back to wherever you are and come back again when you've built the right muscle for this particular exercise. But it's important. I've seen many folks who continue doing this. Tomorrow morning will be a better morning until the sun will rise brighter the next day and all. While it's good to be optimistic and hopeful about the future and understand these are just businesses, these are just ventures, and they are not life and death.
Mr. Narayan Murthy, it is said that he tried multiple times before he made Infosys. So yes, very rightly said that the art of letting go is also, I think, equally
Absolutely.
important.
And you see a lot of those biggest businesses today, not everybody had figured their business out from the first day itself. A lot of entrepreneurs, well-known entrepreneurs that we know in the markets in the world today, they started off with something else, didn't work out, stopped it, tried something else, stopped it, tried something else, stopped it. They did not get like emotionally so invested कि वो निकल ही नहीं पाए उस जगह से. It's okay. हो सकता है कभी business का market नहीं है, factors outside of your control, etc. So stop it. Try to do something else if you have to, but like be nimble. In that sense.
No, wonderful. आर्मी में आना फैमिली बैकग्राउंड से कनेक्टेड था. आर्मी से बिजनेस लर्निंग वाला खोलने का कोई ऐसा डायरेक्ट कनेक्शन नहीं था. प्रोडक्ट बनाना, राइट? कोई ऐसे इंजीनियरिंग बैकग्राउंड नहीं है वैसा. Then to move into Facebook and all the places that you worked in.
Sure.
Again, उधर से उसका कोई as such linkage नहीं है. अब जो आपने लिखा उसका partial linkage है, but you are now an author, if I may say so, right? पहले तो मुझे आपसे यही जानना है कि ये मैं राइटर बन सकता हूँ वाला जो ख्याल है, ये आपको कब आया कि यार मैं तो राइटर हूँ यार, मतलब ये आपको कब लगा?
ये तो मुझे कभी भी नहीं लगता. You know. No, but on a serious note, I feel like when I came last year back to India after my stint in the US, and I came back, I started to pen down my learnings of, because I've been in the creator economy, I understand this market a lot more deeper. I had been always in the habit of, jotting down my learnings and, basically journaling and figuring out what's been working, what's not been working and all. That's been a habit. I think.
फौज सिखा देती है.
Exactly. वो फौज की habit है. वो, you always get this notepad with you and you keep on doing that.
Right.
And then वहाँ से, when I started to kind of write down everything, then I also started to listen to a lot of podcasts. I listened to a lot of business podcasts, a lot of books I read and all. And when I was doing all of that and I get some ideas, I used to generally write it down. The world is changing so rapidly over here nowadays. The change that we've seen in the last, let's say, 3 years and what we will see in the next 5 years is, especially in the media space, hasn't been there in the last 150 years probably. The rapidity of the change,
Right.
So because things are moving so rapidly and so fast, so when I'm writing down things, I realize कि यार ये तो मतलब the direction seems to be going somewhere else, which I never thought about maybe a year back or something. And so all of those things, when I started to go through and all, I realized that maybe this not only will benefit me if I put it down in a more structured format, it might benefit everybody and anybody who's in the creator economy. I started off with just writing the table of contents, the index. And I was like, okay, if I had to write a book, what would be those things I'd like to talk about,
Achha.
So I started with that, and it was just a wish list. Okay, first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, and sub chapters and all. And then I realized कि इन सब के अंदर पे I have some meat, I have something to say about. हाँ, है मसाला. And then it all, I just wrote down two lines, three lines, like a description of that sub chapter and all. And I realized कि this is all actually coming together, and this makes sense to be told in a story format, or this makes sense to be told in a expanded format where I can simplify the complex learnings of what the creator economy is, and also how it is not only about the creator, but it is also equally about businesses, it's equally about the community, it's equally about the platforms. How can I talk about all of that in a more structured manner and all? So that's when it all started to take shape, and then I started to expand on every little chapter. And luckily for me, I had worked with so many creators across the world, whether it was in Hyderabad to Hong Kong, to even Houston. I had a chance of working with so many creators that had so many anecdotes and so many sort of ideas of my memories of so many interactions that I had. So I started putting those episodes or those examples of those creators in the book, and that's how it kind of started to come together. And before I even knew it, it was like a 100, 150 pager already set there, and then the whole question was on expanding that even further.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Can you elaborate a little on the creator economy? What is it and what does it mean?
So, any content that you see on the phone, right? If you're seeing a creator content on your phone, you are consuming content, and then you move on to the next piece of content, you scroll up or whichever way. But the fact is that every piece of content that you're watching has got a creator behind it, a team behind that creator,
right,
and an economics that's flowing through. Like there could be ad dollars, there could be brand dollars. There's some economics that's happening over there.
Right.
So if I was to kind of if I was to kind of zoom in and then zoom out of what the creator economy is, I could see it in what I call the 5C framework, because the C1 is the heart and soul of the creator economy, which is the creator.
Creator himself,
right?
Yes.
The C2 is the collaborator. In other words, the brands. Brands who are paying the creators to make content, or are sponsoring content, or even putting ads and all those things.
Right.
C3 is the channels. Channels are the platforms.
Right.
These could be your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your Josh, your any platform. C4 is the commerce C, and with that I mean any sort of money making that can happen on the creator economy other than the ad dollars, because ad और वो brands के साथ हो गया already.
ठीक है.
So उसके अलावा आप क्या newsletters कर सकते हो, आप podcast कर सकते हो, आप one-on-one coachings कर सकते हो, आप book writing कर सकते हो, आप कुछ भी कर सकते हो. So I mean, which are the other ways of making money in the creator economy? That's commerce. And the fifth C is like the spine of it all, which is the consumer or the community, people like you and me who are consuming content.
Correct.
Out of these 5 C's, the creator economy is all about all of these 5 C's interacting and transacting with each other. So whether C1 to C5, C4 to C3, either of them, but they're all interacting with each other. And that in a nutshell is the creator economy. So my book really goes into the deeper aspect of what is all of these 5 C's and how do they interact with each other? Where are the overlaps? How is a business interacting with a creator? How is a consumer or a community interacting with a business? How can channels play a relevant part in all of this? So all of those things really the book talks about that. And then there are various concepts, like Ratish, we often use the words creator and influencer very fluidly,
Correct. Maybe लोग same ही समझते हैं.
लोग समझते वही हैं. And at the same time, they are same, but they are still different.
Oh,
right?
अच्छा.
Concepts like these, I'm trying to break down into and say that, okay, these are not, let's say, cast in stone, but these are my understanding of the experience, of the years of experience of what is the difference between both of them,
Right.
Then things like, there are some pieces of content who are doing really well and some pieces of content which don't do really well. Though creators ne banaye hue content hai, almost similar content, but some of them are doing better than the others. So what is the secret of that content doing much better than this content? And I call this the 3R framework.
Okay.
So forgive me for the 5 C's, 3 R's, but this is the 3R framework. And 3R bole to any content which is relevant, recent, and relatable. If you check on these 3 boxes, it will tend to do better than the content piece that is not. And of course, I've gone into much deeper and why is it, and given some case studies and examples in terms of like which are the kind of pieces of content that are checking on these 3 boxes and all. So those kind of things break down the creator economy in my head, and which I bring out in the book as well.
Wonderful. एक बड़ा सवाल मेरा दिमाग में आया आपसे बात करते हुए. There's so much content flowing of all sorts, right? I mean, मैं खुद भी Instagram पे कई बार देखता हूँ, कई तरह के लोग कुछ भी बना रहे होते हैं. Because इनके साथ आपने बहुत closely काम भी किया हुआ है. Do you see any trend in today's influencer marketing or creator economy space which you feel is not in the right direction?
Oh, that's such a good question. I see many. But frankly, let's talk about this way. You actually, when you said कि मैं content देखता हूँ, मैं भी करता हूँ. I also mindlessly scroll sometimes. And if you look at it, when you keep on scrolling, we are not looking at the social media as social media then. We are looking at it as an entertainment platform. So what's happening is that in many ways, all of this content that we are seeing is moving away from that concept of social, like, creator and follower community. उस सबसे हट के a lot of content that you're scrolling through right now is not even of the creators that you follow.
Correct.
ये तो उन लोगों का content जिनको आप follow भी नहीं करते हो. So this is just mindless content that's coming into your screen and you're just kind of moving up. So what is happening is that it's moved from that social connection wala space to a plain entertainment media right now.
Right.
So that's the big change that is happening, I feel, which is good, but it's also bad, because what's bad is that every creator, a creator is he sustains himself or herself on their community. If the audiences are just scrolling down and they don't even see the people that they're following, then where is the community aspect?
Correct.
If I'm a creator, how can I connect with you deeply if you're not going to watch my content even? Because there'll be so much more content around you that you'll be surrounded with.
Right.
So that is a disturbing trend in the sense that we tell our people that, hey, as a creator, you've got to build your community, get deeper into it and all. But conversely, we are not able to go deep because people attention spans are much smaller and people are just kind of scrolling up and are not even following your content. So I think that is a mismatch that's happening, which needs to be plugged as soon as possible. What also needs to be done and what's been changing now is that there is a lack of loyal followers or true followers. I think that's an area that's missing nowadays, that I feel like it's something that is a trend which we should really not try to miss our bus on. And the third thing I'll say is that platforms are changing all the time. Algorithms are changing. The platforms are prioritizing sometimes videos. Like, I'm a LinkedIn creator. I actively post on LinkedIn, but I'm not very comfortable with the camera. Now, LinkedIn it's become a thing that you have to be on videos on LinkedIn.
Right.
My expression was mostly on text. So now as a person who's been very comfortable with that platform, I'll have to change myself because I need to match the platform. So what happens is that algorithms change and those rules change and the priorities change and all, which is not very comfortable for the creator per se. And then out of many reasons, sometimes out of nowhere, like what happened in the US or what happened in India some time back, is like platforms can get banned very quickly. TikTok. So suddenly when you build a community, if I have built a community of 10,000 people on LinkedIn and kal ko agar wo platform ruk jata hai ya out of my control, if I'm unable to post on it, then what happens to my community?
Correct.
So those kind of areas is where I think about more often nowadays, and I start thinking about like what is the way that a creator can safeguard themselves across on these kind of trends that are coming up now.
Great. So abhi aapne, you must have heard the news of this whole India Got Latent controversy. And a lot of famous content creators are being dragged into that or were part of it and are being facing the wrath of the audience as well as the system. So this brings me back to the point, and I want to know your opinion on this. जो content creators हैं, sometimes in the garb of creativity, बाउंड्रीज थोड़ी सी ब्लर हो जाती है कि कहाँ रुकना है कहाँ नहीं रुकना है. ये पहले हमारी मूवीज़ में भी हुआ करता था कि हॉलीवुड में बहुत कुछ दिखाया जाता है, दे गिव यू क्रिएटिव फ्रीडम, वेयर इंडिया में देयर इज सेंसर बोर्ड एंड दिस बोर्ड एंड दैट बोर्ड, तो उससे काफ़ी कुछ रुक जाता है. तो आपका क्या ओपिनियन है इसके ऊपर, दैट विद दिस होल रणवीर अलाहाबादिया कंट्रोवर्सी एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, व्हाट डू यू थिंक, शुड देयर बी गाइडिंग framework for the creators? Should they have a moral responsibility at some level? Matlab, what is that you feel about this whole thing?
There are a lot of thoughts I have in my head. The size of the creators, or the size of the creator economy in India, number of creators in India. As per a recent study I was reading somewhere, there are 80 million creators in India.
Wow.
8 crore creators in India.
In India?
In India only.
My
And less than 1% of them actually make a sustainable living. उस less than 1% के अंदर पे भी the top 0.1% maybe is people like Ranveer Alahabadia, because they are like the most, they're an authority when it comes to the podcasts that they run and all. Do they have a moral obligation? Are they the champions of the community? Certainly yes. Are they in a place where they feel like they can get away, say anything and, just move on with it? I don't think so. I think there should be accountability at that level at least, or at any level there should be accountability to your audiences. But certainly at a level where you're championing an entire community, you should have that level of accountability and moral code of ethics, if you may. कि आपको, how do you want to present yourself when you're coming in front of the screen? In your personal life, you could be whoever you are.
Right.
But at least in the screen, when you're there in front of your audiences, like there should be a level meant for the audience, for the community that you're representing. Number one. Number two, has it been overblown in many respects? Frankly, I feel so.
Achha.
There should be a regulatory body or there should be a governing body for the large pool of creators or the creator economy in India. Definitely yes, and many countries have it already. But I don't think it was required, or I don't think I think it's a bit of an overkill when you have the judiciary and the law enforcement and the ministerial representatives all getting into this dialogue. If you had a regulatory framework for the creator economy, this was well within the rights of that framework to be, addressed, these kind of issues. And I think a lot of times all of this happens because there's lack of education and awareness, even at the topmost levels. Is that the responsibility of that framework or that regulatory body which could go ahead and, provide that sort of education and awareness to all creators? Definitely. It's well within their mandate. But I don't think it is required in that sense to have the judiciary or the, the legal system or the legal frameworks involved, because they have much bigger fish to fry.
Correct.
There's so much more happening in this country which requires their attention, their priorities.
Right.
To your question, there should definitely be a framework to kind of help creators understand what the boundaries are and, understand, educate themselves and make them more aware of what the boundaries are and how should they be representing the communities. But I'll say that's where it is.
Okay. No, great. And that's a fair explanation to that.